top story that we've been tracking since yesterday, and that is the devastation that Uttarkashi, Dharali has seen. What was the reason? What really happened yesterday at about 2:45 p.m.? Was it really a cloudburst or a glacial melt? Here's more. A Himalayan tragedy, a cloudburst sparking catastrophe. Dharali village washed away. Sludge swallowing lives in a flash. Flash flood horror as houses fall to the wrath of an angry river. Over 100 reported missing, 5 bodies recovered, dozens feared trapped. Frightening pictures of the chaos unleashed. Ma Ganga as Ma Bhagirathi in full fury. Villages wiped out, highways washed away, roads caved in, vehicles floating like paper boats. Dharali Harsil, nearly all but cut off by road. Road network paralyzed, 163 roads blocked across the state. The expanse of this great Himalayan tragedy still unknown. But what happened in Dharali Harsil? What led to this devastation? Was it a cloudburst that led to the flash floods or a glacial collapse? The cloudburst theory, fact or flawed? In the hours after Dharali's devastation, many blamed it to a sudden cloudburst. A cloudburst means heavy rains over a small area in a brief period of time. Over 100 mm in 1 hour, enough to trigger landslides and floods. But what did the data record? Harsil recorded just 6.5 mm. Bhatwari saw 11 mm over 24 hours. That's nowhere near cloudburst levels. Experts now question if rain was even the primary trigger. Was it a glacial lake burst instead? The low rainfall data may debunk the cloudburst theory. The disaster may be hiding a deeper and colder origin. Glacial burst theory. Scientists suspect a glacial collapse or a glacial lake outburst flood, triggering the flash floods in Dharali, Uttarkashi. Satellite data confirms 2 glacial lakes and large glaciers identified directly above affected site. Several glacial ponds lie hidden in the snowfields north of Dharali. Heavy rain and melting snow likely filled those ponds to the brim. One burst, triggering a domino effect. Others followed. Water and debris came crashing down with terrifying force. The gradient dangerously steep, accelerating destruction. Cloudburst or glacial collapse, natural or man-made? Climate change or wrath of rains? Questions that need to be addressed before we witness all of this once again. Bureau Report, India Today. All right, quickly dipping into news break that is coming in. The Indian Army has now launched a swift and coordinated humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operation in the wake of the devastating cloudburst, which is questionable right now, viewers, because most experts have debunked the cloudburst theory. The region is currently cut off from both north and south due to multiple road breaches, landslides and collapsed bridges. Over 225 army personnel, including infantry engineering teams, are on ground for search, rescue and relief tasks. 7 teams are operating with Recce radar near Tekla. Search and rescue dogs are deployed at Harsil, more en route from remount and veterinary centers. But once again, the biggest problem is that Harsil and Dharali is completely cut off from both sides where it comes down to access. So on foot, teams have been able to reach there. The aerial route is open. You've got some men, some machinery that has been, brought in through the aerial route, through helicopters, but large pieces of machinery, gas cutters, all of that yet to reach the site. Therefore, till now, we have limited knowledge what is really the expanse of this particular tragedy. I want to cut across to my colleague Anjali Ishtwal, who's joining us live from Maneri, Uttarakhand. Ankit Sharma also joining us live from Dehradun. I want to cut across to Anjali first. Anjali, very close right now to where this tragedy took place. Anjali, what more can you add? The area completely cut off for the last 24 hours. You're trying to access it. How close are you, and what are you picking up from the locals that you're speaking to around you? What is this expanse of the tragedy?
Right, Preeti, as darkness is descending, we decided to retreat back. We were just 51 kilometers short from ground zero where the incident happened. And because it is an area which is not very heavily populated, it is the area that we were at, it's called Bhatwadi. It is a village that was what we were calling the last motorable point. After that, there were cave-ins of roads. The National Highway 34 had completely given away at 2 points. At one point, there was a 60-meter cave-in, and then there was a 100-meter cave-in just a kilometer down the road. So obviously, there was no way we could have gone further. But at that point of time, we realized that the SDRF and the NDRF teams, they had walked past it and they had tried to reach the location on foot. But the good thing is, as you mentioned, that the aerial route had opened up. So there were continuous sorties also of the helicopters that we could hear all the time while we were standing over there. The people over there, the locals, as you asked, I spoke to some of them. They knew about the deluge, what should we call it? We can't call it a cloudburst as you mentioned it. It was death basically that came down the mountains in form of mud, water and sludge and engulfed an entire village. Well, they knew about it and they said that the roads were open for a while, but then the Bhagirathi, the river that comes down towards Uttarkashi, it was so violent at that point of time. It had so much rubble, so much water and velocity in it that it came and crashed into the walls over there at Bhatwadi. And that's where the cave-ins started. And after that, that area became inaccessible.
All right, Anjali, appreciate you joining us. I want to quickly get to Ankit. Ankit, right now, the fatalities stand exactly what they were yesterday. We just have one more confirmed, unfortunately, of death, which is 5, but scores, hundreds still missing. The reason, Ankit, is because help has just about gotten to Harsil only this afternoon through the aerial route, so it will take another 24 hours to know what is the real damage.
Yes, absolutely. 24 hours, more than 24 hours passed, and yet the situation is still grim, and a lot of manpower is being mobilized, but they are on hold to some extent because of the adverse weather conditions in Uttarkashi and ahead in Dharali as well. Now, it's one of the very rare terrains and harsh terrains, I would say. And we spoke to 2 scientists who also say that if it is not the cloudburst, then there could have been either a lake breach or there was some water which was accumulated in the mountains, and due to some extent force or pressure, the moraine, which is the lower part of an avalanche, which is settled in a solid form, had burst out, and the rubble along with water came down heavily to completely devastate the Dharali village and the surroundings. Now it has created an alluvial fan, which is like a fan-like shape if you focus over the geography at the moment. And before-after picture shows that there is a fan-like shape that has been created, a shell-like shape, and completely gone away. There were houses, there were lives. So many people were living over there.
How many missing, Ankit, before we get into our experts? How many missing right now? Do we have an official figure on that?
Well, talking about the official figure, there is search for, according to Uttarakhand Disaster Management Authority, they say that they are looking for, at the moment they have a list of 15 people. However, our sources say that there are more than 50 people who are missing. Yes, and that is why the forces have been mobilized. There are Chinooks, there are My-17s, and UCADA has also been
Right.
undertaking sorties. Several
We'll
sorties
keep a
were
keen eye on all of
undertaken.
that. Ankit and Anjali, thank you for joining us. Be safe. We'll keep coming back to the both of you. I want to quickly cut across to our experts because they were the theory that was making the round that this was a cloudburst that led to flash floods which completely consumed Dharali village. Well, it doesn't seem like that. What it is now seemingly suggests was a glacial melt or a lake burst, which I would reckon is way more alarming than what could have been the reason where a cloud burst is concerned. Joining us, Dr. Anjal Prakash, expert on the Hindu Kush Himalayas water system, Vimlendu Jha, environmentalist activist, M. Shashidhar Reddy, former Vice Chairperson, National Disaster Management. I would like to begin with Dr. Prakash. Dr. Prakash, would you throw some light, because this was something we were discussing yesterday, because if you look at it right now in terms of the rainfall at that point of time, it doesn't seem to suggest enough to create a cloudburst-like situation. What we're actually looking like now, which could be way more worrisome, is the fact that it could be a glacial melt or a lake burst, sir.
So much. And actually, yesterday in a program, I have raised this question, though, the media reports at that time were saying cloudburst. And I told them that it looks like a glacial avalanche for me from the images that I've seen. Further, if you have inquired and you look at the kind of rainfall data, you understand that when the cloudburst happen, at least minimum 50 to 100 millimeter rainfall should happen in 30 minutes of time. And that is what scientifically we categorize that as a cloudburst. So this I wasn't sure because the rainfall data actually wasn't showing that high rainfall within a particular period of time. But I was waiting for any official confirmation from the government of India, this Ministry of Science and Technology, and other institutes like Vadia Institute, who has been monitoring this area. I haven't seen much of the update from their side. Probably it will come sooner after the initial, recce that they may do and tell us about this. So, but let me also, Preeti, tell you that both these events, even if it's a cloudburst or glacial avalanche, both of them are climate-led event, and this has been, either way, this is alarming situation because both these situations are actually going to be increasing, as we know from the IPCC reports as we see.
Vimlendu Jha, would you want to come in on this theory now that definitely not a cloud burst, and how worrisome would you think a glacial melt scenario which led to possibly smaller lakes bursting?
I think, Preeti, what Dr. Prakash just now said, that it doesn't really matter to get into the technicality. Of course, for us, for our analysis and for our academic reasons, we could really have the debate, yes. But looking at irrespective of whether it was a cloudburst or it was a glacial avalanche, the impact would have been similar. Of course, the degree would change in some way or the other. But this entire area, the other slides that you had shown, whether it was man-made, the kind of construction that has taken place, the entire sludge that has actually come down as almost like an analysis of the sludge that's actually floating in the river, the rubble that we're talking about, and that's the main concern that we're talking about. And this is upstream, almost like the first 50, 60 kilometers from Gangotri that we are talking about. And imagine the impact that this would have later. And this is the state. What I've been talking about since last 2 days also is that the way we have actually looked at this entire construction project, one is the reason why we commissioned it was flawed. The way we executed it has been flawed without any scientific, ecological, or other understanding. There's no engineering marvel. We have only sliced the mountain without even understanding the geology of the place. Imagine, no, everyone wants roads to be there. We want mobility, but mobility does not mean 12 meters of mobility in a geologically sensitive zone. Mobility does not mean slicing the Himalayas more than 45 degrees. When, the Chopra Committee report that was actually commissioned by the Supreme Court itself said that, there are several river bodies, rivulets, not just Ganga and Yamuna that we talk about in Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand has more than 2 dozen, 3 dozen small rivers as tributaries, and all of them have actually been blocked. And in this construction process, and that data that I had also put forward in my tweet, almost 20 million tons of excavated soil has actually been dumped in the river. So when you actually have these choke points created, and therefore a lot of these lake-like formations, and therefore any form of rain, be it a flash flood or a cloudburst, a lot of that creates almost like a mini dam or a micro dam kind of a condition. And when that gets violated, or when that breaks, it almost creates a situation like this. So if you look at the visuals that we've actually presented, the only one or two visuals that every channel has, in that you can see the sludge, the rocks, the debris actually floating down. Some of it could be the characteristic of the Himalayas, which is that's the geology, that's the kind of rocks that you actually find in the Himalayas, but also the sludge that is actually being dumped in this entire thing. Nobody today, I think in this more than 24 hours, we haven't heard a word from Minister of Environment and Forest. More than 24 hours, we haven't heard anything from the star minister called Nitin Gadkari, because Char Dham Yatra project, Char Dham Road project, actually chopped 56,000 trees for this, and against every environmental norm or environmental protocol that needs to be followed, because that project of 689 kilometers was sliced into 53 smaller projects, and no environmental impact assessment was done. So, and of course, the disaster management expert is here, but a lot of this,
Right.
eagerness that we have to act after disaster, why do we not look at early warning systems in terms of what the nature has given us from
That's
2013 to now?
true. That is something that Dr. Prakash did touch on even yesterday about the early warning system and the lack of it and how
But
we
early
failed in
warning
that
system in
account.
terms of several events, if you have a Joshi Mutt sinking, if you have a Sikkim
True.
lake sinking, if you have Himachal sinking, why do you wait for yet another sink story to happen? And disaster management is not post-disaster, it's also pre-disaster.
Fair point. I want to bring in our third guest, Sridhar Reddy, former Vice Chairperson, National Disaster Management Authority. Sir, you've dealt with crises such as this before. 2013, you were no stranger to that and what happened in Uttarakhand. I want to get a larger understanding because everything is cut off. So while, there is only a limited amount of supplies, limited amount of boots on ground that can reach the location through the aerial route. Every road leading to Harsil has been completely cut off. What does this mean when rescue is imperative in the first 48 hours? Because we are looking at rescue, relief will kick in later. How big an impediment is this?
Well, this is a very serious kind of a situation, though it is not a very extensive thing as we had during the Kedarnath flood. All the same, the people's lives involved, search and rescue is a very important phase. Right now, we have to go through it. It's sad that, the routes are cut off. Weather is bad. We had to encounter this kind of weather way back in 2013. Yes, we need to find ways to reach there and try to reach out to the maximum so that we can rescue the maximum number of people. But the earlier part, when you mentioned whether this was what kind of a disaster is this, whether it was a cloudburst, the rainfall data doesn't indicate that, but we don't know what happens above the 3,000 meter mark, till above which the IMD does not have any access in terms of their weather monitoring recording capability. Then there is a similarity that when you go back to 2021, exactly 4.5 years ago, in the Rishi Ganga Chameli flood, a similar thing had happened, and that was described as a rock slide.